What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, putting America first, second, and third. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to the show today. It's Thursday, June 23rd, 2011. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. Sure happy it's Thursday. We're almost to the end of the week. A lot of stuff going on here. The phone lines are open, 877-342-6673, 877-342-6673. Brett is in the control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, and answering the phone when it rings. Before we get into the news here, I kind of want to respond to this advertising campaign that sort of came and went. I haven't seen it in a while yet, but it was for a website or a concept called corn sugar, which, as you know, is the new name for high fructose corn syrup. And the advertising pitch of this website and the ad campaign is that there really is no difference between high fructose corn syrup and other kinds of sugar that you would get from sugar cane or sugar beets. And, of course, they are chemically different, and there are concerns about adverse health effects of high fructose corn syrup. And the ad campaign is to say sugar is sugar, your body can't tell the difference. Now, the reason high fructose corn syrup is so popular with food manufacturers, it's inexpensive, and it stores on shelves really well. It doesn't start crystallizing and dropping down to the bottom of the product. It dissolves, it stays dissolved, and there are a lot of reasons from the manufacturer's point of view why it's a really cool thing to have in your product. Unfortunately, they are absolutely not telling you the truth. It isn't the same as cane sugar or beet sugar, and your body can tell the difference. For some people, it's not an issue. But certainly in my case, I can have regular sugar without any problems whatsoever. But if I have fructose, it triggers hypoglycemia. I start producing too much insulin, and I get into these sugar crashes. So I have to avoid high fructose corn syrup. And it became an issue because I like to get this basically evaporated cane-juiced natural raw sugar without a lot of processing. It's not whitened up or prettified. And I normally go to this one organic brand. And the supermarket was out of that brand, and they had another one over there, natural, blah, 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 and all kinds of label about natural and organic and everything. And I started using that, and I got a little sick. And come to find out, this alternate brand isn't really natural. It's a manufactured blend of sugars, including, sadly, fructose, and they actually dye it to make it look like it's raw sugar. And it's just one of those things where, manufacturers will see a trend, people wanting to go to natural, organic, and no additives, and they'll just repackage whatever they're selling and say, oh, yeah, this is green and it's natural and whatnot. So you got to read those labels. If you have food sensitivities, you got to read those labels because those manufacturers, they are sneaky. And we have got to keep an eye on them for the health of ourselves and certainly for our children, because more and more people are becoming concerned that high fructose corn syrup is one of the things that does contribute to childhood obesity. We have all these chemicals in our food that actually make us fat. It's not just that we're lazy people, and it's not that we're just, constantly, chowing down. We have an obesity epidemic in the United States of America because American supermarkets are full of food products that are full of chemicals that actually make you eat more. Monosodium glutamate suppresses the signal in your brain that says, I've had enough to eat. It's sold as a flavor enhancer. It's actually used as a prescription drug for people dealing with bulimia because it makes them eat more. And so that's in the food. The aspartame, that is supposed to be this diet aid, this calorie-free sugar substitute, it actually causes your body to crave more carbohydrates. And on, synthetic bovine growth hormones. There's all these chemicals in the food that actually make you eat and buy more, which runs up the profits at the supermarket and the food manufacturers, but it's not necessarily healthy for you. And we already know from the SEC turning a blind eye to Bernie Madoff with the loot, MMS turning a blind eye to safety violations down there in the Gulf of Mexico, and all these other institutions. Government's not watching out for you. Government sees itself as the aid and compatriot and co-conspirator with the corporations. And so if you have food sensitivities and chemical sensitivities, you got to be responsible. You got to read those labels. And yes, I know they use little tiny letters on those labels, and you sit there with your little magnifying glass, that you have to carry in your wallet and everything, trying to read those chemical names. It's a general rule. If you're not an organic chemist, the good rule of thumb is if you can't pronounce it, you shouldn't be putting it in your mouth. Alrighty, moving right along here into more serious news. As you're probably aware, a lot of people are commenting on Barack Obama's pledge to basically bring troops home from Afghanistan. And it's obviously a political move. We're going into the election year. He's trying to look like he's doing the will of the people. All he's really talking about bringing home, of course, are the surge troops. He's not talking about bringing back the base deployment that is still there in Afghanistan. I mean, in theory, with Osama bin Laden being dead sometime in the last 10 years, our mission in Afghanistan is supposed to be over. That was the reason we were told we must go into Afghanistan. We've got to get bin Laden. Well, he's been got. And so for President Obama to say, I'm bringing some of the troops home, that's not enough. He should say, the war is over. Let's let the Afghanis have their country back and sort out their own messes. We know that won't go very well because that was the mistake we made following the Soviet Union's withdrawal from Afghanistan, but it's their country. They don't want us there. Karzai doesn't want us there. Barack Obama did not go far enough. He needs to bring all the troops home. And, of course, the ones he's bringing home, he didn't say he's discharging them. He didn't say he's letting them go back to their families. They're probably being held in reserve because they're trying to crank up this war in Syria. And remember, Syria and Iran have a mutual defense pact. If we go to war in Syria, we will be at war with Iran, which, of course, is what Israel has been pushing for all these many years. As soon as they got us tricked into war on Iraq because of the weapons of mass destruction that weren't really there, we were just in there, and already Israel is saying, after you take care of Iraq, you got to get Iran for us. You've got to go kill them for us. And they still haven't given up on that. They want your sons, your daughters to go out there into war in Iran. So Obama's withdrawal of Afghan troops, it's a token gesture. And he is our token president. It's got nothing to do with his skin color. Because everything he does is a token gesture for good publicity, and it doesn't really change anything. This oil reserve release is political trickery. Because if you look at how much oil and gas are consumed by the American people, not to mention the war machine, the amount of oil he's releasing from the strategic reserve isn't really all that much. Again, it's a token display for political purposes, and it's not going to have significant effect on overall supply. And yes, there was a little tiny dip in the price of oil today in response to the news of the release, but when the oil analysts look at how much is actually involved versus the total amount of oil flow going into the country, they'll realize, it's a gesture at best, and the oil prices will go right back up. I don't know about where you are in the country. Here in Hawaii, gas prices are already at $4. Diesel is almost $4.50 now. So it is getting very, very intense out here. Yesterday, of course, we had the report coming out of the Federal Reserve where Ben Bernanke's getting up there and basically issuing his State of the Economy speech, and basically came out with this kind of an approach. I'm not really sure why the economy isn't turning around. But we're going to go on taking money from the people and give to the bankers and hope for the best that things will improve. And obviously, that is not working. And Bernanke's out there saying that he doesn't understand why the economy is not recovering. And, of course, he understands. We know why the economy is in trouble. Experts and politicians have known why the economy was going to be destroyed going all the way back to 1776. When you have a private central bank issuing the public currency at interest, a crash is inevitable. The bankers get rich. The people are driven into poverty and starvation and unemployment. That, as the night follows the day, is the result of that model of banking system. We've had 3 of those. Why they keep on doing it? Well, I know why they keep on doing it, because the bankers and the politicians who are getting donations from the bankers, they're getting rich. And that's the reason they keep doing it. But I wanted to point out something here that Ben Bernanke may or may not understand, and you need to understand. The national economy is kind of like a big house. And if you need to move a house, if you need to move it to higher ground to get out of the floodwaters, for example, you have to pick it up by the foundation. If you just hook onto that roof and you try and pick up the house, the whole building will shatter. And the economy is exactly the same way. If you want to improve an economy, you've got to grab it by the foundation. Who are the foundation? The workers. Because labor precedes capital. You cannot pick an economy up by the roof, and yet that's exactly what all the bailout nonsense is trying to do. Trillions of dollars taken from the American people and poured onto the Wall Street banks and investment houses. It's not working. It was never designed to work. It's just there to do favors for the cronies. And Bernanke is now sitting there with a handful of roof shingles and claims not to understand what happened. Yeah, he knows what happened. He knows exactly what happened. He's doing what his buddies on Wall Street want. Rob from the poor to give to the rich. We're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about Ben Bernanke's statement yesterday, or statements basically saying that he doesn't understand why the economy isn't working, that they've printed up all this money and they've given it to Wall Street and they don't understand why that didn't make everything better for everybody besides Wall Street. And the reality is, and this gets back to that analogy about trying to move a house by the roof instead of the foundation. The fact is that the money junkies in our government and in our financial system moved the money the wrong way. In response to the mortgage-backed security fraud and the necessity to save the banks, trillions and trillions of dollars were taken from the people and given to the bankers. According to Dylan Ratigan, his estimate is it's $27 trillion. My own estimate's a little bit lower, but let's go with Dylan's number here. That basically works out to $81,000 for every living American, from the tiniest newborn baby to the old retired curmudgeon. Now, had we moved that money the other way, we would not be on the verge of collapse right now. If we had, instead of pouring all this money all over Wall Street to save them from jail, if we had reversed the flow, if we had given every American $81,000, there would have been no missed mortgage payments. There would be no housing crisis. Had we given every American $81,000 instead of taking it away from them, all the credit cards would be up to date. There'd be no credit crisis. Had we given every American $81,000 instead of taking it away from them, they would have bought brand new American cars, and there would have been no need for automaker bailouts, not to mention the loss of all those automaker manufacturing jobs. Had we given every American $81,000 instead of taking it away from them, they would have been down at the malls buying products made by American manufacturers, and we would have our manufacturing and full employment and the lifestyle for which most Americans worked their lives to achieve. But we didn't do that. We took trillions of dollars from the American people and gave it to the banks so the banks could loan it back to the American people at interest. Such a deal. And the bankers didn't do it. They put it in their pocket. They said, ooh, we better hang on to this because things may get worse down the road. And they have. Because the money stopped circulating. An economy is a system. And for the system to work, money must be flowing at all levels of society in order to lubricate commerce. That's what Ben Franklin was telling the court of King George III. The states put out the money. We have ample currency. Everybody's working. Everybody's making money. Everybody's prosperous. But bankers don't like that. Bankers come from a different point of view. It is not enough that they succeed. Everybody else must fail. And that's kind of where we are right now. The fact that we have a lot of money circulating around Wall Street and Washington, D.C. does not mean we have a healthy economy. The health of the economy is not measured by how prosperous the politicians and bankers are. The true measure of the economy is how prosperous ordinary, everyday Americans are. And by that measure, we are definitely a nation very much in decline. When you have ample money in circulation issued by the government free of accruing interest charges, there's going to be full employment and no poverty. But when a private central bank is issuing all currency as the proceed of a loan at interest, inevitably there's poverty and starvation of the people while the banks The wealth of the nation is captured by the bankers. That's why they set these things up. We fought a revolution to be free of the evils of private central banking, only to have later Congresses and later presidents be corrupted by the bankers and sell us back into that bondage. We've had 3 of these private central banks. All 3 have brought the nation to the edge of ruin. Where is the next Andrew Jackson who will shut down the private bank and restore prosperity to the American people? Might be Ron Paul. Right now, he's the only one who even looks like he's willing to stand up to the Federal Reserve. I hope he's wearing his Kevlar undies here. But the tragedy is that while we were all looking the other way, distracted by the media and all the pretty little, 5 tragedies and a beauty pageant, our most important freedom, the freedom to prosper by our own labor, was stolen from us by our own government and sold to the private central bankers so that we would toil endlessly throughout our lives to make the bankers rich instead of ourselves, while the schools and churches lie to us that this is the way life was supposed to be, and that all freedom really means is the freedom to choose which banker you will be a slave to. So when Bernanke gets up there and says he doesn't understand why the economy is the way it is, he's lying. He knows exactly why the economy is the way it is, because he is part of the machine that believes in impoverishing the people to enrich the bankers, of which he himself happens to be one. So Bernanke isn't really fooling anybody when he pretends to be clueless. He knows exactly what's going on. These are very simple fundamental principles, and our founding fathers understood thoroughly the dangers of private central banking. And you need to understand it as well, because what you are being told by the corporate media and by Bernanke and by the U.S. government is self-serving propaganda. They love the system the way it is. All the money flows to them for nothing more than the cost of ink and paper. We are slaves, and our chains are not made of steel, they're made of paper. Paper chains. But the good news is, paper chains are the easiest to break. All you have to do is stop believing in the power of ink and paper. All you have to do is be willing to live without that government that enslaves you with paper and ink chains here. Now, according to the latest analysis, inflation has hit 10%. Apparently down in February. So we're edging really, really close to that hyperinflationary spiral. I know that there's this big debate, will there be a quantitative easing 3? We're not really sure. We do know the Federal Reserve operates outside of public scrutiny. There might be more printing and giving away of money, and they won't tell us, just like the Federal Reserve refuses to say how much money they printed up to send to Iraq. We're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. I was over in the chat room and somebody's saying, well, we really ought not to go back to a silver or gold-backed currency because the bankers who wreck the economy, they've got most of the silver and gold, and that actually is very much true. But currencies, value-based currencies, can be based on something else of value. It doesn't have to be silver or gold. All it has to be is something that everybody agrees has an inherent value and exists in ample enough supply to prevent speculative manipulation. And obviously at the current situation where all the gold and silver, most of the gold and silver is in the hands of the bankers, gold and silver are not going to work. Maybe copper, maybe a unit of labor, that's been done before with success. But we cannot have debt-based currencies any longer because they are a pyramid scheme and they must inevitably crash. Now, Congress, in order to deal with the looming U.S. insolvency, basically the sense is that after Greece, the United States is next. Even with increasing the debt limit, it's just plunging the country deeper into debt. And we've lost our manufacturing base. We don't have a way to pay the debts except to go and invade people and steal money from them. So Congress has decided the best way to deal with our current economic decline is to change how inflation is being measured. In other words, they cannot fix the problem. So they're going to change the rules by which these various economic indicators are being calculated, like consumer price index, The rate of inflation, just like they've been fudging the unemployment numbers. They can't really change reality. They're just going to change the yardstick. That's their whole idea of a solution. It's like when the EPA, we've got radiation pouring onto our head from Fukushima at what we used to be told were dangerous limits. How does the EPA fix that? Well, we'll just change the threshold. And now, hey, we are still within the safe limits as we have recently redefined them. Remember 2 years ago, the when pigs fly flu, and the World Health Organization was screaming, it's a pandemic, it's a pandemic. And when we examine it very closely, we find out that in order to stimulate vaccine sales, the World Health Organization had simply redefined lower the number of cases of the flu that it took to declare it a pandemic. It wasn't really a pandemic, it was a relabeling. And now Congress is talking about doing that here in the United States of America. The current dashboard, the current gas gauge, if you will, is not giving us good numbers. So let's just change the dial, change the standard of measurement so we get numbers that look really good. And it's not really fixing anything. It's purely political. It's purely media. It's pure election year. We got to look like we're making progress here. So we're going to change the yardstick that we use. But the reality is that our economy is in trouble because of the biggest financial fraud in the history of the world, coupled with this black hole of war, spending, and debt. And nobody even knows where the money is going. We know that somewhere between $6 and $18 billion has vanished into thin air in Iraq, and we don't know how much has vanished because the Federal Reserve won't tell anybody how much they printed up and put on those plastic-wrapped pallets and flew over there to hand out. We just don't know. It took a court fight to find out where the Federal Reserve had been handing all this cash out, which is all of it's considered a loan against your future labor and that of your children and your grandchildren. So there's a lot of secrecy going on. They're hiding stuff. They're changing the measurements on the other. And the net result of this is they don't want you to get a good, solid grasp on how bad things are because they understand. We're close to Iceland here. We're close to Egypt here. We're close to Greece here. And they're trying to keep you confused so they can say, well, things aren't so bad. See, the numbers are looking great. It's like when they send the plunge protection team to try and shove that stock market up every time it comes down because that's their best banner. See, the stock market is up. The economy must be good. If you're losing your home and your business, it's your own fault. And that's the way they try and keep you from getting angry. And the situation is, though, stop listening to the corporate media. Stop looking at government reports and numbers because you know they're changing the dials on that. Take a walk around your neighborhood. If you want to know the health of the nation's economy, just go for a walk or a drive around your neighborhood. Look at the amount of crime. Look at the amount of empty vacancies. Look at the deteriorated condition of the roads, the schools, the infrastructure. Decide for yourself if this nation's economy is healthy or not, and don't let anybody else tell you, oh, no, you're just one of those malcontents. Things are great. I mean, look how beautiful and clean it is in places like, Beverly Hills and Palm Beach. Look, see, that's the true measure of the economy. Well, from that, if you live in those places, yeah, that looks pretty good. But 99.9% of us don't live in those nice neighborhoods. We live in places like Nebraska and Ohio and Tennessee and Arizona. And they're all beautiful in their own way. But when you come to look at the part of the country that the government is supposed to maintain for the benefit of those of us who pay the taxes, it's really, really bad. Your taxes are making nicer roads in Israel than they are in this country. And it's a very, very bad situation. It's not going to change until you find that ability to get angry, to be very, very honest. Now, over in the Middle East, all the talk about Libya going back and forth and, defunding this and war powers that and all the rest of it. There's another war that's cranking up, and that, of course, is the intended attack against Syria. They're trying to provoke Syria into doing something that they can say, aha, Syria did this, we must therefore respond. We know that Turkish helicopters have been flying over the Syrian border. That's a provocation. Actually, technically, it's an act of war. When your warplanes fly into somebody else's country without permission, technically, that's an act of war. Apparently, some Turkish troops put up the flag of Turkey over an abandoned building on the Syrian side of the border. They just walked across the border, ran to the flag, and skedaddled. And so the Syrian troops have taken that flag down. But again, it's a provocation. It's a slap in the face. They're trying to get Syria to do something that the media can say, how dare they? We must go and deal with them. And, Israel has been caught faking another interview with the Syrian Muslim Brotherhood and how we have to go in and deal with them. The Muslim Brotherhood, by the way, is a rebranding of Al-Qaeda because too many people found out that Al-Qaeda in Arabic slang means the toilet. So they had to do a rebrand on that. That's where Muslim Brotherhood came from. But we know over the last couple of weeks we had, remember, the Syrian lesbian bloggers. There were 2 of them, and both of them got outed as these married straight guys here in the United States of America. And their job was to create this tear-jerking fraud. Oh, the Syrians are being bad to women, and even worse, they're being bad to lesbians. And and again, it's another war-starting hoax, like the incubator story. And so the indications here are very, very clear that a war with Syria is next on the hit parade. And the danger of that, of course, is that Syria and Iran have a mutual defense pact. When Israel tricks the dumb Americans into war on Syria, that will trigger the war with Iran that Israel really wants. There's another story, just to give you an idea of how they're trying to spin this, that Syria is bad. The headline was, Syrian troops near Turkey border as refugees flee. And the implication is that the Syrian troops are basically, beating down the popular revolt. Actually, you don't find popular revolts on the border with another country. You find the invading army on that border. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back.
We will not go down in the night without a fight. You can burn up our mosques and our homes and our schools, but our spirit will never die. We will not go down in Gaza tonight.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. So the signals seem to be, as the war in Libya deteriorates, it's prompting a congressional fight in the United States of America. Italy is already saying they want out. We're starting to see deep fractures within NATO over the Libyan situation. So quick like a bunny, they're going to crank up a new war in Syria. They're going to get NATO into Syria for whatever reason that they're going to do. We seem to be on this horrible, horrible treadmill. We have all these wars that are a complete disaster. By any benchmark you want to use, they're complete failures. They're political failures. They're economic failures. I have no idea why President Obama got a Nobel Peace Prize when he's got 4 official wars going, trying to get 5th and 6th going, plus all the covert actions out there. But basically, Syria is the next one, and of course, behind that is the real prize for Israel, and that is for the United States to take care of Iran, because by golly, we don't like those people. And if we don't like people, the Americans will go kill them. Now, China is warning the United States to basically stay clear of regional disputes. There's a little bit of a kerfuffle going on between China and Vietnam over the Spratly Islands, and it's a territorial dispute. And China and Vietnam ought to sort it all out for themselves. And the United States is saying they have to go in there because Philippine nationals are involved and at risk and in danger. And so we could wind up at war with China on the side of Vietnam. When I was a kid, they were the bad guys. And now they're our allies, and we're going to go in and we're going to clobber China, who was our ally against Japan in World War II. Isn't it kind of weird? We go to war with somebody, then they're our friend, then they're our enemy again. We've always been at war with East Asia. Real 1984 stuff. Now, you probably heard over the last couple of days, there was a crash of a Russian airliner that had on its passenger list several nuclear engineers, scientists, design experts. It turns out these are like 5 of Russia's top engineers who were working on Iran's nuclear power plant. And reading the Israeli press, they can scarcely contain their joy. Yeehaw! They're gone! And so the obvious suspicion here is that once again the Mossad has simply gone out and killed anybody that they felt needed killing. That's the way Israel kind of operates here. I don't imagine that Russia is particularly thrilled with this, because when you start murdering the citizens of a foreign country, that foreign country generally gets upset with it. Unless, of course, it's the United States of America. Israel can kill all the Americans they want, and our government won't do a thing about it. But I expect that Russia will probably take this a little bit more seriously. And it's really not going to deter Iran from building its power station, because Iran understands something that apparently a lot of other countries in the West don't. The oil is going to run out. Yes, there's lots of oil down there, and I know about the the deep crust microbes that are producing methane, which will produce more fuel, but those little microbes can't produce it as fast as we're burning it up. And those deep crust microbes are really, really, really deep. Where the oil is being created and formed down there is almost unreachable, and there's an ironclad rule of oil development. If it takes more than a barrel's worth of oil energy to get a barrel's worth of oil to the surface and to market, then the party is over. Because you're losing money and you're losing energy continuing down that path. We need to start looking at thorium cycle reactors right now, because fission reactors are going to go away. Unless you're Great Britain. They just signed up for a whole new batch of them over there. Now, looking at Campaign 2012 here, Michelle Bachmann, is this really the best that our country can produce for politicians? So she's up in New Hampshire, my home state. I grew up on a farm in New Hampshire. I'm a farm kid, Granite Stater. So she's up there in New Hampshire, and she's declaring it the birthplace of the American Revolution, saying that it's your state that fired the shot that was heard round the world. You are the state of Lexington and Concord. You started the battle for liberty in your backyard. Oh, great. We've got another Sarah Palin on our hands. Now, if you work for Michelle Bachmann or you are Michelle Bachmann, here is a clue. The cradle of liberty in the United States of America is the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The cities of Lexington and Concord are in Massachusetts. The Concord that's in New Hampshire is a different town. And the shot that was heard around the world was fired in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. New Hampshire certainly stood shoulder to shoulder with Massachusetts. New Hampshire was the first state to sign the Declaration of Independence. But if you are that clueless about American history, why are you even bothering to run for office in this country? I don't care how hard you bang that Bible. Everybody can see you are a clueless idiot. And again, is this the best our political system can produce for candidates? Michelle Bachmann and Sarah Palin? I know there are female politicians out there who are more credible and who should be given a chance for high office. I remember when John McCain picked Sarah Palin as his vice presidential candidate, and everybody said, "What are you thinking?" And I was thinking, here in Hawaii, our governor at the time was Linda Lingle. And I didn't always see eye to eye with Linda Lingle on her positions. But there was absolutely never any doubt in my mind that she was qualified for the job that she was in. And maybe she didn't look as great as Sarah Palin in a bathing suit. I will concede that. But that really shouldn't be a deciding factor on an election. And when I talked to Lingle's office, she never even got a call from McCain. Not a single call about maybe coming on board the team. So again, is this really the best that our political system can produce as candidates? Oh, my. Sometimes I think maybe I should run for office, but I can't really because I won't lie to the American people. I did inhale both times, and I liked it. Now, getting back to Sarah Palin, apparently she has quit her bus tour about halfway through. Nobody was showing up, apparently, except for the paid crowds, the rent-a-ruckus people who'd show up and they go, yeah, in front of the camera, and then they'd get their free lunch and they'd go home. And so apparently she's basically canceled the rest of her bus tour, and it's not looking like she's going to be all that credible as a candidate in 2012. Of course, she wasn't all that credible as a candidate in 2008. If there's one useful thing Sarah Palin did for the country, it was to really educate the American people. just how easily the corporate media can be bought and swayed and lured into the fluffy stuff and away from the core issues that really affect the life of the nation here. Now, as you know, Texas may be looking at a bill to ban TSA groping and fondling of our children, our wives, and our daughters. That is still yet to come up to a vote in Texas. We're waiting to hear on that one way or the other. Michigan is now considering a similar law, making it a misdemeanor offense for TSA agents to grab your crotch as a condition for getting on board of an airplane. And they're saying there has to be a reasonable cause to suspect that somebody's hiding something inside their clothing. And so more and more states are standing up, to basically fight for the dignity of people. Remember, every dictator takes away your dignity, because without your dignity and without your pride, it's hard to stand up against an evil government. If you've lost your dignity, if you've had your pride taken away from you, you just stay there and you just let things happen to you. And that's why they're taking away your pride and your dignity. That's why they're grabbing your bodily parts and looking at you naked. It's to destroy your pride. It's to destroy your pride in being an American. It's to destroy your pride in being who you are, in your dignity. If you let them take that away from you, then they've already won. And we're going to have to go to the same level of social and national destruction that Germany did when they lost their World War. Because we're not going to win this one. We can't. We don't have the material and the resources to do it, no matter how many nuclear bombs we fling all over the place. The TSA exists to take away your dignity and your pride and your self-respect. That's what their job is. They're not here worried about terrorists. They've never caught one. Napolitano just said shipping companies don't have to x-ray those containers coming into our ports. It was never about a terrorist threat. It's about stealing from you your self-respect, your pride, and your dignity. And you cannot give that up. You must take it back. Do not lower your eyes to the Gestapo. You just stare right into their eyes and you let them know that you are not going to bow down before the new Gestapo. By the way, speaking of getting completely out of control with the Gestapo, there is an 80-year-old jazz pianist. 80 years old. He has played music all his life. Clean police record. Never done anything. His name is Ahmad Jamal. And apparently the U.S. government has frozen his bank account. He cannot receive payment for this music concert that he did in Switzerland. They blocked the money coming into the United States because he sounds like he might be Muslim. And that is now the new benchmark. If you're Muslim, we're going to stop the money coming to you. And other professional musicians with Muslim names are saying the same thing. The government is basically stealing from them, stealing their money, not because they've done anything, not because they're terrorists, but just because they have got Muslim names. Ooh, bad Muslim names. Do you remember the stories of what we were told, how the Jews were being treated by the Nazis? Is this not like the same thing? You've got a Muslim name. We're not going to let you get paid for the work that you did. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. We need to change the national anthem from the Star-Spangled Banner to Send in the Clowns. Meanwhile, over in Russia, they just had a poll over there. A third of Russians wish they could shoot corrupt officials. I mean, shoot them dead. Just over a third of the country's population wish they could shoot down anybody who takes a bribe, anybody who's speculating in their financial system. Yeah. But listen, folks, do not shoot corrupt officials because it's going to wake up your neighbors and they'll get angry and they need their sleep. So be polite. Strangle the corrupt officials because that way everybody can get some sleep. Or hang them and make it a big party for the entire neighborhood. All right, we're going to take a break for news and commercials. We'll be back with hour number 2 after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show, hour number 2. Joining me on the telephone right now is Jeff Rense, a man who needs no introductions, but I'm going to introduce him anyway. And Jeff, thank you for spending time with us today. And, you know, considering how long I've been on your network here, it's about time you got over here and said hello.
Well, Michael, thank you. I'm very glad to be here. I'm more than glad that you're here, as it were. The Rense Radio Network is not the biggest, but I have intended from the beginning to keep it absolutely focused on the highest quality possible. And I don't go around other networks trying to steal hosts. And I was very grateful that you contacted me and indicated that you were looking and had some recommendations of coming this way and that you're here. It's a perfect match for the other programs we have on the network, and I think that we have, honestly, I think the best quality network in radio right now in terms of telling people the honest truth and bringing reality as close to them as we possibly can, which is not easy anymore.
No, it definitely is not. But one of the reasons I was glad to come over and join you on your network is obviously you and I go back a ways to a very common, shall we say, origin on another network that shall remain nameless. And we both kind of went through similar experiences with that organization.
Yeah.
And that put us on our respective paths. Yes.
Yeah.
And now we've reconverged, and we're back here working together. And so far, I'm having a lot of fun here on the Rense Network. My numbers seem to be up. We're getting more and more interest from potential advertisers to fund all of this operation. We get a lot of emails from people coming in and saying, yeah, it's really a lot better in the new time slot. So you say we're not a big network. I think that might change. I think we're hitting a point where the corporate media is very much in decline, and the American people are really beginning to understand they have to go out and find the truth for themselves. And they're starting to work through some of the dreck that's out there, and eventually they show up here, and I think our audience is going to continue to grow from this point forward.
Well, I think you're right. That portion of our society that is waking up is looking. And the nice thing about our network is they can actually listen to Michael Rivero anytime they want. The archives on demand are there. They can listen to you at their convenience. They don't have to be at a certain appointed time. And I think your other point is certainly very well taken. Traditional corporate AM and FM stations, broadcasting as we knew it 20, 25 years ago, is changing. In fact, it's going. Radio is now part and parcel of the Internet phenomenon, which has taken the planet. We have listeners, and so do you, all around the world. Now, that was impossible to do, 15 years ago. But it's common now. And as you continue to grow and generate popularity and respect, so will your worldwide audience. Standalone stations now are having to try to play catch-up by joining the Internet. And what we're doing is making our programs available to all those stations anywhere in the country or the world who would like to carry us. And one last note, the numbers that you and I see and our other hosts on the network are not even close to the numbers that in reality are out there, because the ways of the Internet are, well, let's just say things have a habit of propagating. They get out the gate and they go geometrically and they explode all over the planet. People send files and they rebroadcast things. We don't even know who's carrying our programs, to be frank. We don't know.
I'm continuously surprised at the places that our shows are appearing. A lot of stuff gets packaged with graphics and shows up on YouTube. I'll go out to websites and there'll be links back to Rense Radio, and there's a lot of stuff out there. I was over at Sears the other day, and I saw yet another Internet radio appliance.
Oh, really?
Where basically this is a box. This is, they're starting to become more and more common, where it's a box. You put it on your shelf like a regular, table radio, but it doesn't go out to AM and FM. It grabs your Wi-Fi and it goes out to grab a station from anywhere in the world you want to listen to.
Wow.
Obviously, of course, you're going to want to listen to Rense Radio on this thing. But if Sears is carrying it, then this is obviously a trend for the future.
Oh, for sure. And we don't want to say the other store, the big box store, the China Mart store, will certainly follow suit. They're not about to be left behind. The other thing which is fascinating, Mike, is that all of these smartphones, Android phones, the iPhone, BlackBerry, they can listen to us or any other Internet broadcast they want. And the most amazing invention probably of our lifetimes in terms of data gathering, communication, and stockpiling, the Apple iPad, iPad 2 now. That literally puts the whole world in your hands. The known universe, let's take it to that point. I mean, right in your hands. Anything we know that is accessible, that's not black opt or otherwise covered up, you can get to through the iPad. I mean, it's really amazing.
Yeah, they are, and there's the new generation of netbooks, and everybody's going tablet now, and all of these all of these windows on the world, as Wi-Fi becomes more and more ubiquitous, or the 4G LTE becomes more ubiquitous, you literally have your connection to the planetary intelligence, if you want to call it that, everywhere you go. And a lot of people, they do listen to the shows from that. They do listen to the podcasts from that. They go to Justin TV, and it really is everywhere. And at this point, it really is almost impossible to say how far we're reaching. But we keep getting these little tantalizing indications that we're really a lot further out there than we thought we were last week. And again, if the goal is to try and derail this push toward World War III, the more it gets out there, the happier I am.
Oh, for sure. The enemy we're up against, I think, was no more clearly delineated for those who have been watching than the tragic lying, and it is tragic, of the Japanese government and TEPCO vis-a-vis the greatest environmental and human tragedy of probably recorded history, even beyond that of Krakatoa, the enormous volcanic explosion. What has happened and what is happening and what will continue to happen at Fukushima, maybe for 50 or 100 years, is so off the scale in terms of death and potential destruction, genetic mutations, all kinds of environmental impacts, is right there staring us in the face. And if you ask the average person who doesn't listen to What Really Happened, or the other programs on the network, or a few others, on the street, well, what's going on at Fukushima, if they can even remember anything at all, they'll probably tell you, as a doctor did to me 2 weeks ago, well, it's over, it's done, they took care of it. Because it's not in the news, and that's how people think.
Yeah, and yet we had Al Gore on the news last night trying to come back here with his carbon Nazi,
please.
Trust me, it's super ethereal, it's getting worse, we have to get Man-Bear Pig. And again, they're selling that whole carbon tax thing, and you finally reach a point where you begin to understand that the government can only deal with those crises it manufactures itself to sell you a new policy. But when we have a real disaster, like the economic meltdown, the Gulf oil disaster, Fukushima, and now Nebraska, they can't deal with it. They throw up their hands and say, well, let's pretend it doesn't exist and let's go on back to waving Sarah Palin at everybody.
Well, that's the big bonus of owning the entertainment and the entire mainstream media, and that's about 5 or 6 corporations. They can do what they want. That reminds me, Operation Northwoods in the 1950s, late 50s, the CIA bragged then that they could put any story they wanted in any major newspaper in America within hours. Now, that was in the 1950s. So you have
was Mockingbird.
Yeah, exactly. You have to understand, one does, and I say this rhetorically, that where they were in the 50s and where they are now is, light years difference, but the control is probably so far beyond the ability of the average person to understand that they not only would say you're lying if you try to tell them, but they might even argue and walk off. It is total control. And I'm talking about they don't need that every reporter, man or woman, anchor, doesn't matter. They don't need all those people to be employed by them, because they'll go along to get along, because if they don't, they're out the door and there's 5,000 other people waiting to take their spots.
Well, the danger with that is when people are saying, I'm just going to be quiet, I'm going to go along, I'm going to be a good little citizen, I'm not going to make a fuss, and they keep on hoping that at some point the government and the money junkies will say, all right, we've done enough, let's go back to letting the people have good lives. It's not really going to happen. The lesson there is looking at Germany during World War II, where all the German people were saying, well, let's just put up with it with a little bit longer and maybe things will get better. And they didn't. They had to lose their entire country to rubble.
Well, we're on the verge of that right here.
Yes,
Sad.
Very much so.
Yeah. Any dictatorship, any strong-armed thuggery, any autocrat, any kind of oligarchy does the same thing to its citizens. It intimidates them, it beguiles them, it bribes them, and then it threatens them, and they cave in. And America, just unfortunately, is sitting on a situation that is really unprecedented, because the education system has been so thoroughly taken over by them. It is literally producing exactly what they want, consuming reactionary zombies. Now, that's not all of them. There are exceptions. But these people are so malleable and so manageable and controllable now, the subjugation is, in my opinion, virtually complete for all intents and purposes, and that can be demonstrated by the arrogance by which the controllers are throwing their crap in our faces, which is exactly what they're doing.
Okay, Jeff, we got to take a break for commercials, but please stay with me. I want to follow up on what you just said when we come back from these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking with Jeff Rense, and we're talking about the state of our nation and this ongoing deterioration that we're seeing. There is so much about our current history that mirrors what was done to Nazi Germany, from the attack on the World Trade Towers, mimicking the attack on the Gleiwitz radio towers, the demonization of an ethnic minority as a scapegoat object for all the evils that were befalling the country, the constant invasion, one country after the other. Now we have this TSA Gestapo. They're blue shirts instead of brown shirts, but it's really the same kind of thing. Yeah. I sometimes feel that required reading in Washington, D.C. is Dictatorships for Dummies, Adolf Hitler, because they just seem to be following his game plan right to the letter, and why more and more Americans don't realize it's the same game plan doomed to the same crashing finale is a mystery.
It is a mystery. We don't seem to learn from history. That's always been something that has perplexed me to no end. I suppose part of it is the way history is rewritten all the time and revised. We really don't have a good grasp on it. The issues you raise are very valid, correct. And we are headed toward, I think, a catastrophe here sooner rather than later, barring some kind of incredible intervention by some power, either on or off planet. I mean, I'm not going to rule anything out. But Americans now have been so dumbed down, you know that, and your listeners are in the so-called elite in terms of being viable intellectually. They think they are proactive, or they wouldn't be listening. This is a minority now, and I'm sad to say that, but it's unfortunately true.
Well, we're a growing minority, and to get back to what you were saying about our schools really not being about education as much as indoctrination, one of the comments I've made on this radio show is the way that we're taught history in the school system. It's all name, place, date, name, place, date, name, place, date. So we grow up seeing history as these isolated incidents, and we don't see the cause and effect because we're not trained to see cause and effect in history. We don't see it when it's happening right in front of us. Somebody once said that history repeats itself, and that's really what's wrong with history, and it's absolutely true because people coming out of the public education system and watching TV, they don't have the analytical skills to look at current events and see, oh yeah, we've been down this road before and it didn't work. You know, why are we trying the same thing again and expecting a different outcome?
They can't synthesize. They don't have the facts. It is name, place, date, but I'll add one to it. Name, place, date, forget. Name, place, date, forget. No one remembers anything. There's a 95% memory loss after 5 days, and it runs up to about 98% after a week. That's an average. With the way that the young people now, not all of them, but most of them are being taught, they are literally coming out of the schools consumer reactives, and they'll walk until something makes them react, and then they'll walk on again. It used to be the individual was prized above all else. Now it's the group, it's the herd, it's the hive, it's the flock.
Collective.
Sure,
it's
that's
communism.
Very
very much so. And the situation with the education, when I was teaching over at the University of Hawaii, and I said the reason I focus so much on core theory is education ought to be like a Christmas tree. And if you have that tree in the middle that is your basic core concepts, then everything that you learn you can hang on that tree.
That's
and
a nice
remember
picture. Very nice.
But if you start throwing ornaments and there's no tree there, then the ornaments are going to break and fall away. And that's why you're saying the people forget things so quickly. They don't have the tree in their brain to hang them on. And with history, that core tree is the cause and effect, the way things flow from one to the other. And when you understand these historical events in their context, you will remember them because you understand, oh, what happened when this, oh yeah, I remember, this is what followed on to that whole situation. That's the framework on which the education is there. But schools don't do that. They just throw a lot of facts at you, and they don't give you the means to basically retain it. All they're teaching you is obedience to authority and read the instruction on the computer screen, press the right button, and you will eventually go to heaven. Hey,
teaching everybody to live in the moment. No accountability, no responsibility, no extrapolation of your role in the larger picture. It's literally a moment-to-moment self-gratification motivation that many of our younger people, I'm talking about people under 40 now. You got two generations solidly into the MTV Celebrity People magazine, cult modality. How do you get them out? I don't have the answers, but I'll tell you right now, until and unless it changes, we are the only hope. I mean, this kind of information, the reality of the planet. I don't even call it truth anymore because the truth has been so corrupted. But reality is another thing, and I think that's what we try to bring and present to people who still care.
Well, I think there's a positive note out there because our demographics on the website, and I presume also the radio show, the demographic, the median age is trending downward. And that tells me that we're getting more and more of the young people who are saying, I'm not getting the real world from TV. I'm not getting it from school. And if we fail to stop this war, it's the young people who are going to get stuck fighting it. And that's the reason I'm so glad to see young people coming on board, because they're the ones who are going to pay for our failure if we can't get this thing under control.
There's a division, and you're right. The young people who get it and who want to better themselves, not the majority, not yet, but they are absolutely walking away from the useless, mindless, endless self-gratification of their peers. It's sad. And I taught high school for a couple of years, and I think your Christmas tree analogy is really marvelous. It does tell the story. There's no spine, no skeleton. You got a bag of jelly. There's nothing there. And I don't know what we're going to do about it in the long term except keep on and keep at it. But the idea of this country continuing to be looted, the American taxpayer to be being ravaged, is quite clear to most younger people now who really look at things honestly, and they don't want to get involved with that. They get out of college now, and the average college student loan debt is, I think, $36,000. And one guy I saw today being interviewed said, "Yeah, I'm $93,000 in debt." And folks, there's only one job for every 5 applicants now in this country. So think about it.
It's pretty bad out there.
Where are these kids going to go to work?
We got to take another break, Jeff. Stay with me. I want to keep you for one more segment, and we'll be right back after these commercials. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking with Jeff Rense. And, Jeff, I kind of hold it as the highest moral purpose for any of us that we leave to the next generation a better world than that which was left to us. And unfortunately for our generation, we're failing miserably. And the next generation, the kids who are they're not even of voting age yet, and they're beginning to realize they're stuck with this huge debt obligation not of their own making, just as our generation was stuck with a debt obligation that goes back to the founding of the Federal Reserve, which all happened before we were born. We had no voice in it whatsoever. We were just born, and they said, okay, this is your share of the debt that's been run up by the money junkies and the government, and freedom means the freedom to work your life away to pay off this debt that you had no choice in making whatsoever. And I think this is indentured servitude we're leaving our children into. When the government prints up these T-bills to sell to the Federal Reserve, those T-bills are a promise to make your children and grandchildren work and simply take the money away from them and give it to the bankers. And all the bankers provided to get that work, that labor, that slave labor, that indentured servitude, is ink and paper notes. And when people step back and they look at the real nature of the banking system, they understand we're not a free people at all. We are enslaved to the private central bankers with chains made of paper, and it's a scam. And our schools are always teaching us all these lies about how, the bank only loans out money that comes from the depositors, and we know that's not true. And really, the Federal Reserve creates money out of thin air to loan to us at plus interest, but we're not allowed to create money out of thin air to pay them back, and that is the inherent imbalance to the system.
First of all, you said something that I have always tried to live my life around, and that's to leave whatever I come into contact with, if possible, in at least slightly better condition than it was when I arrived, and especially our heritage and our children. That is the most sacred obligation we have, I think, as sentient beings, and I agree with you 100%.
I agree. Absolutely agree.
The idea of usury is criminal. It is a license to thieves. We have been looted to the core. The theft of this country's well-being, its essential financial health, was accomplished a long time ago. It's over. People talk about Ron Paul. They talk about this candidate or that, or this movement or that movement. Where, Mr. Paul, is the bill to abolish the Fed, get rid of the Patriot Act, get rid of the MCA? There are about 12 or 15 things that ought to be on the front burner of every truly patriotic American congressman or congresswoman. Senator, doesn't matter. We're not getting those things even introduced. Now, Ron is talking about the Fed. Yes, he's made some very good statements, but nothing's being done about it. And I submit, unfortunately, that the Federal Reserve System is a cancer in this country that is inoperable and cannot be removed short of some kind of drastic, and I can't even imagine what it might be, surgery. These people have their hands in the claw of our soul, and they're not going to release us until and unless they feel like it, which is never going to happen. There's no end to greed. How much is too much? There's no such thing as too much when you have that kind of lust for power and control. And, yeah, ink and paper notes, they don't even have to make those anymore. It's all done with computer keyboards and a few strokes of the keys.
And that's all it takes to enslave the people. We need a new Andrew Jackson. We absolutely do.
Oh, that'd be fun, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Oh, boy, I would definitely sign up to support a new Andrew Jackson who's going to go out there and say, you are a den of vipers and thieves, and I will rout you out.
Well,
and he was absolutely right to do so.
He was, but here's the problem, and this is the hardest thing for most people to understand. Those who are in control, and I'm talking about the City of London banksters, the Wall Street banksters, the Federal Reserve, and all their cronies, and all those who have been bought off through bribes and blackmail and other influence peddling. We are literally facing something that is unprecedented in the world's history. It is that bad. So I don't know, again, how we're going to deal with it. These people will take us all down rather than give it up. Now, to make that point to someone is very difficult to do. Your listeners understand it. Listeners
yes, they do.
To other programs and other website visitors understand if they want to see reality. But when you've got 200 cable channels sitting in your left hand and your thumb is on the button, and you can inoculate yourself until you feel good and don't have to face anything uncomfortable, that's a drug. And we are drugged out to the max. Now, here's one last thing. Those people are so dangerous, those who are in control, that they will kill you if you get in their way. They have no qualms about it. Political murders and executions are common. Paul Wellstone and his wife. Look, the list is endless. The Kennedys. Now, the latest example, 5 Russian scientists, nuclear physicists, who helped design and put online the Iranian nuclear reactor were all killed in a plane crash with 44 other people. The plane was found to be in perfect mechanical condition. They were taken down. The enemy will take down an entire airplane to get rid of one person if they feel it's in their interest. That's how lethal the situation is.
I think the word is ruthless, and you're absolutely correct. And it will be a war between the money junkies and the rest of humanity. But I think the proper way to frame the situation right now is there's been this huge push for a global fascist dictatorship, a global government, the New World Order, whatever name you want to put on it.
Sure.
And it has set the stage for a global revolution that began in Iceland, has gone to Egypt, is happening in Greece now. It looks like Spain is going to go next. Massive strikes in Great Britain. The people of all of these countries are standing up and saying, we didn't create this mess. You did it without our permission. You can fix it or not without our help. And if you can't fix it without our help, then go out of business and make way for a government that will take care of the people. We could literally see, a global revolution against the money junkies. And instead of this one gigantic single world government that serves the bankers, go back to regions that are basically taking care of their own people with state-issued currencies. I'd really like to see that happen. I think regionalization is a much better alternative to this push for globalization.
Well, that's what the Confederacy was essentially about, too. They didn't want federalization. That was the whole Civil War was predicated on total control. That was what it was really about. People don't
Civil
understand
rights, states' rights, rather. Yes,
of course. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm pretty much ashamed of the states so far. It turns out that the state legislatures, in many ways, are just about as corrupt as those creeps in Washington. So.
Well, they all see it as a training ground for federal office, so they're not thinking about what's good for the
state. It's a rocket
to
stardom for them. Yeah.
Yeah, it's my next step up here. We got a caller waiting on the line, George in Texas. Aloha, George. Do you have a question for Jeff?
Yeah, how you doing, Mike? Nice listening to you, Jeff. It's a pleasure always listening to you.
Thank you, George.
Yes, Now, I've written a blog. I mean, Mike posted on his site. It was about it was something very, very, and I'm surprised because a lot of these people are buying into this. It's called I forget off the top, but Comcast Cable is offering it, a home security system where you can dim your lights and all that stuff. And people really think it's all not fine and dandy, but people don't realize technology is a two-edged sword. And if you can set up cameras to watch your house and see what your kids are doing out the day, so can the government. And this is the sad part about technology. It can be used against us, and it can be used for the benefit of us.
You're so right, George. In California, they're introducing what they call smart meters for your house, which literally take charge of your electrical usage, and they want to come and take your refrigerators away and force you to buy what they call energy-efficient refrigerators, all made in Mexico. These are called smart meters, and it is far worse than that. We'll just leave it there for the moment, but you're so right. Any kind of home security that's tied into any kind of a matrix, even if it's in your local town, is potentially dangerous. I agree.
Well, a lot of these... George, can I get in here a little bit? A lot of these things that were being sold because it's supposed to be good for the earth are turning out to be very harebrained schemes. We were talking yesterday about how the new lower temperature dishwashers and environmentally friendly dish soaps are not killing pathogens that are accumulating in the dishwasher, and it's actually making people sick. We've been talking about how the iPhone is spying on people. We're going to skip over the break here, and we're just going to keep going to the end of the hour. But we talk about the iPhone spying on people, and the technology is wonderful to have, but in the hands of a government that is just absolutely determined they're going to control everything about your life. I mean, you will use compact fluorescence. You will not use tungsten bulbs. Even Hitler did not go into the homes of the German people and say, you will use this kind of lighting in your home. That's how completely dominated we are right now. They're telling us what kind of light bulbs we can use.
George, have you bought any of those curly Q light bulbs yet?
No. I stocked up for like about 10 years supply of them light bulbs.
You mean
the old ones.
Good man. That's the way to do it. Theoretically, what Mike says is absolutely true. They are intruding into our lives right down to the level of telling us what kind of light bulbs we can have. I mean, how crazy does it get? Where's the outrage? That's the question. Where is the outrage?
That's such an incredible question.
Well, the thing about
go ahead, George.
About the electric smart meters, we're talking with the union of the power company meter readers.
Mm-hmm.
They have a union, and they want to get rid of these smart meters because...
Well, they're going to get rid of the union, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, they found a little thing in the Texas law that said that these digital meters violate calibration laws. They have to be calibrated.
Right. Good. Well, you better stand on that and organize some people to use that, or you're going to find yourself facing a smart meter situation on your house. And there's a lot more of these things that we aren't told about that are extremely dangerous, the smart meters.
Yeah, George, we're going to let you go here because we're running out of time, and I want to hit a couple more concepts before the end of the show. There have been a lot of cases where people have been forced to change over to these smart meters, and their bills go up. And the electric or water company says, we don't know, but, pay your bill or we'll shut you off. I want to get back to something that you were starting to talk about before George went back onto the smart meter situation. I am always asking myself, where is the anger? Where is the rage? Where is the fury? We evolved to feel anger and rage against those who are a threat to ourselves and our family and our community. And I'm just wondering why in a world where so many other countries are standing up for their rights and freedoms, why the American people are still so paralyzed. Is it the fluoride in our water? Have they already started adding lithium like they were talking about doing a couple of weeks ago? It's just amazing. You would think by now that the American people, with their cultural history of standing up against the Bank of England, would have started standing up now. And it is a source of amazement to me that, yeah, your audience and my audience and our readers, they're ready to go. But the vast majority of Americans, they're just seeing their kids taken away to go die in wars on a foreign shore, and they just sit there and say, well, I guess that's just the way it's supposed to be. And they almost seem less than human because they can't feel human reactions. They can't feel human anger.
That's true. It is a I think it is a less than human reaction. And it's brought about, of course, by the anesthetizing of the masses through so many things we've already mentioned. You push the button on your remote, you pop in something into your whatever computer, and you listen to anything you want any time of the day. It's complete luxury of self-indulgence, and that kind of thing leads to a wasting away of the strength of the soul, and because you're constantly just gratifying yourself. And they do that all the time, whether it be television, the movies, or peer pressure, sports. How many people identify with sports as their alter ego, a sports team? And when you think about sports is really miniature warfare, sanitized. Our army against your army, whatever. And people take great delight in that. And it's always amazed me that people can become that enmeshed and that ensconced in something outside themselves to really represent who they are on the planet. And that's sad.
Yeah, but it's safe for them to do that. I mean, you're not going to get thrown
Total
in jail
safety.
if you're out there cheering for a football team or anything, unless you break into a fight at a soccer game or something. But I was talking about this on the show the other day. People who want to get involved and really feel the world needs to be improved, they're afraid to go up against the government, and so the government basically puts out these other things like save the whales and save the kittens and save the puppies and, the club seals and deadbeat dads. And there are all these causes out there for people to get involved with and feel like they're making the world a better place. Or in the church, they're saying, get on your knees and clasp your hands together and the world will get better. And for the money junkies and the warmongers, that's just absolutely perfect because you're out of their way, because you're over dealing with the clubbed baby seals and the rest of it, and you're not interfering with their plans. For the people who are standing up to the real core issues of the economy and the war and the false flag terror attacks, it's a very high-risk situation. You can have careers destroyed. I lost my career in Hollywood doing this twice now. And, that's why I've quit that. And this is now my full-time job, being on the radio and doing the webmaster stuff, because to me, this is far more important than getting out there and pretending to save the world on a TV show.
Well said. And I didn't know that, but their loss is our gain. You're a vital voice, and if you were lost in the Hollywood matrix, where would we be? I mean, there wouldn't be another Michael Rivero, so that's good. But you're totally right. I don't know how you can wake someone up when someone is actually sleepwalking, and that's what these people are. The control, the dominance of these people who are running the show is so amazing, because social engineering now and mass mind control and manipulation is more than just an art. It is a science. They know precisely what to do, and I think you know this, and many of your listeners may, that the military and private enterprise got together and actually literally strung supercomputers together and created a second planet Earth with everything duplicated down to the actual number of individual nodes or people they have in that planet Earth. It's a virtual Earth. So they can feed into that virtual, living, 24-hour-a-day responsive, and everything that happens in our real time is pumped into that computer. They can put any scenario they want into that computer and get a result plus or minus 1 or 2%. They know exactly what's going on and exactly what will happen depending upon what they want to try to do.
A lot of this social engineering comes out of advertising, and I used to work in advertising many, many, many years ago, and we were talking about, literally where these consulting agencies that would, be charging thousands of dollars just to tell you what color dress the housewife should be wearing for this particular soap commercial. And it was all based on all this focus group stuff, and it all goes back to Pawns. Remember, for the skinny loves to touch, that was when they realized that the way to manipulate people wasn't with facts and figures and truth and ingredients and everything, but to appeal to their emotional base and their desires.
Sure.
We're all raised with these horrible insecurities because we've got two parents who expect us to succeed where their lives failed. That's a lot of pressure on a kid. And we all grew up saying, am I really all that I should have been? And, of course, TV advertising will be there saying, no, you're not what you should be. But for only $29.95, you can pour this goop all over your hair, and then you'll be a modern, actualized human being. And if you call in the next 30 minutes, we'll include a set of Ginsu knives.
Wow. What's the number? I want it. I always wanted those knives.
The number is 877-342-6673. The operators are standing by.
Too funny. Okay, now what we're faced with here is another situation. The Environmental Protection Agency, which really shouldn't exist because it's so corrupt, has just pulled all of its monitoring devices out of the city and the area of Boise, Idaho, which seems to be a focus of 2 or 3 very bad things. In April, Boise was registering, March as well, after the Japan earthquake and when Fukushima went down. For some reason, Boise, Idaho was collecting more radioactivity than any other location in the country. The EPA has pulled all of its equipment out because they say there's really no reason to monitor everything because things are returning to normal. Well, there's no proof of that. There won't be. Now, Boise, that's one thing. So, again, the people are being sold out. Big surprise. Boise is also the area of the foreign trade zone, which is going to give the Communist Chinese a 50-square-mile city of their own right next to the Boise, Idaho airport. Now, that will be a city that will be off limits to American laws. It will be basically a foreign country inside the territory of the 48 contiguous formerly United States. And that's in Boise. That's weird, two things in Boise. But there's something going on there. And this Chinese city, these foreign trade zones, of which there are almost 300 of them, are almost like, well, they're like tumors in the country, and they will kill the country. And again, where's the outrage? Where is the outrage?
Well, basically what it is, and this goes back to the creation of the EPA, the United States ran out of gold long ago to collateralize their loans. They've been collateralizing it with large chunks of land, most of it grabbed by the EPA, and they basically said, it's wilderness reserve this, and unroaded area, and wetland this, to sort of disguise what's going on. But though all of those lands seized under the banner of environmentalism, they're the collateral pledged on the U.S. government's loans. And China has called in the loans, and that's why the U.S. government said, yeah, you get these 50 square miles, because that was the collateral. And basically, China has foreclosed on some of those loans, and they said, yeah, now you get this big chunk of land inside the United States of America. And it's very dangerous because the government didn't have the permission of the American people to start pledging our public lands as collateral on loans that the government took out without the permission of the people. And so I'm not even sure that it's really legally valid, but the government's letting it happen because that's the only way they can keep on playing their games over and over. Now, we're almost out of time. I want to go back to the situation about the radiation. The EPA has stopped daily monitoring pretty much across the entire country. Right. They're going to tell us every 3 months how things are going. Interesting coincidence. Today, the reading here in Hawaii with our own radiation meter was the highest it's ever been. And we're very lucky in Hawaii because of the way the winds and currents swirl around us. We've gotten a lot less than the mainland United States, but it's going up. And today was the highest it's been since the Fukushima meltdown. And it's like I was saying about where Congress is going to change the way these various economic indicators are calculated. The FDA and the EPA are simply changing the thresholds so they can say, yeah, everything's all fine because we readjusted these thresholds back in April and you're still in the safe zone. Of course, what they're calling the safe zone now was considered very dangerous. Before that, we understand that there are people in the Pacific Northwest who are experiencing symptoms of mild radiation sickness. We're seeing these unexplained jumps in infant mortality on the Pacific Northwest and apparently in Philadelphia, where the city water supply has been contaminated by radioactivity. So, and I think it's the fact that the government isn't being straight with us that allows people to basically let their imaginations run wild. And imagine the worst possible thing that could happen, and certainly in the case of Fukushima, the worst that we were imagining, 3 meltdowns, turned out to be exactly what happened.
Sure, and there's absolutely nothing they can do about it. That's the downside of it. They put in this water decontamination. Well, it was several companies involved, but Ariba, the French company, was the biggest. Their equipment sprung 48 leaks before they even put it online over there. Another
they can't
company,
get it to work.
The Kuroshio company put in the cesium removal portion of it, and that maxed out within 5 hours, and it was supposed to take 30 days. So the water is not only far more deadly than anyone anticipated there, but the equipment in many cases doesn't work. The Ariba equipment is working at 40% of its potential capacity, according to what the company says. So that's history. They trucked in about 300 storage tanks, stainless steel, to hold this radioactive water. They're running out of room already. It's going to be dumped in the ocean, just like all the rest of it has been. Nothing new there, because there's nothing they can do. They can't tunnel under these reactor meltdowns. Nothing they can do about that. They can't put a barrier there because it'll eat its way right through that. When these things get through the bottom of the concrete and go into the earth and hit the groundwater, there's going to be one hell of an explosion. And when that blows, it's going to continue to spew radioactivity into the sky interminably. No one knows how long this can go on. Somebody actually proposed the idea of blowing up the entire Fukushima plant and dropping it into the earth with a tremendous thermonuclear weapon, suggesting that one thermonuke would be far, far more sustainable in terms of the environment than having 50 to 100 years of this constant outpouring. Dr. Paolo Scampa has already projected that 3 trillion, that's T, lethal doses of radioactivity have been released from Fukushima already. That's a physicist, and it's over here, but that's what's been released.
Numbers.
Yeah.
Okay,
3
we're
million.
Almost to the end of the show here real quick. What's really alarming is, as you know, the FDA was up there in Alaska at a press conference with the Alaska Fishing Association and saying, we don't need to test Pacific seafood. We know it's going to be safe. I actually have contact with the TV show The Deadliest Catch, and they're just out of their minds with fear. They know that all it's going to take is one kid in Alaska with a radiation meter and a crab clicking on YouTube, and the entire fishing industry is gone. And they're just scared that it's going to happen. And we're into June now. I would say probably by the end of August, the radioactive ocean water from Fukushima is going to be getting into the Bering Straits, and it's just going to be really, really ugly. And again, the fact that they're not being straight with us, that's a problem.
Yeah. They won't test even one fish. They said no need to. They're not going to. The radiation is already there. The currents are quite clear in their movement across the ocean, and they move quickly.
Well, don't worry. Ann Coulter says that radiation is good for you, and if you start complaining about the food you're eating, the terrorists are going to win. Blah,
right.
Blah,
we'll
blah.
all look like
all right.
Ann in time, right?
Oh, God, heaven forbid.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's it for our show. Jeff, thank you very much for spending time with me. We got to do it again.
Thank you, Michael.
Pleasure having you on the show. We'll be back tomorrow, Friday, here on the Rense Radio Network. Until then, stay safe, stay well, stay angry, stay skeptical. Hug your loved ones, and aloha, America.